Welcome to Athas' 27th conference, Play, Performance, Pleasure, and Pedagogy. We have a full evening planned to honor a number of people, incredible keynote, so I want to get us right on track. To begin with, I'd like to introduce Vice President for Conference 2013 so that we can thank him for all his work and allow him to introduce his committee so that they can be thanked as well. A terrific colleague, Chase Bringartner.
Thanks so much, Bill. I'm so thrilled that the conference is finally here and that we finally get to share it with all of you. We planned what we think is an incredibly exciting few days here in Orlando, and I wanted to point out a few of those events. Tomorrow morning, instead of one plenary, we will have 3 plenaries occurring simultaneously. We encourage you to choose one or to circulate amongst all 3. We also have small groups of intrepid adventurers that are embarking on play dates to local sites throughout the time of the conference, exploring our surroundings and engaging them through the lens of theater and performance. We also have a free screening tonight at 9:30 of a new documentary about the audition process called Showing Up, and 2 performances, Pearl D'Amour's sharing of a portion of their new piece, Milton, in addition to a discussion of their own work and devising processes, Friday at 10, and Mickey Faust's Free-for-All on Saturday night at 10. We have also had 5 sold-out paid workshops. Then we also have food trucks. 3 of them, in fact, yes. And those will be located just outside the exhibit hall, just through those doors behind you, during lunch hours on Friday and Saturday. And menus for those are posted on the Athas website. And finally, on Friday, during the author's signing and raffle at 1:15 in the exhibit hall, we will be giving away 4 one-day park hopper Disney tickets. So all you have to do to be eligible for those is just to fill out your exhibit hall bingo card, the pink card in your packets, and you'll be eligible for that drawing. A conference with this many moving parts just couldn't exist without a great deal of work. I want to take a moment to publicly recognize the work of my truly wonderful committee. Their imagination, inspiration, and hard work are seen in every inch of the conference programming. Please stand when I call your name to be recognized if you're here. Soyika Colberts, Ken Cernelia, we'll applaud at the end. Or you can applaud now, whichever. Kristen Essen, Megan Sanborn-Jones, Sonia Kuthanek, Sam O'Connell, Jordan Schildkraut, and Monica Stuft. Thank you all so very, very, very much. I also would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank the amazing Nancy Erickson and her sterling staff, Sean Franklin Sewell, Joan Brummer Holden, Cynthia Ward, and Shantezi Webb. They all took our sometimes cockamamie ideas and helped us realize them brilliantly. I really appreciate all of Nancy and her staff's care, their labor, and their attention to detail. I hope that you all have a wonderful time at the conference.
And now it's time to introduce our Vice President for Awards, and it always sort of gives me pause to let Kevin Wetmore have a microphone, but we must. Now I'm very pleased to introduce the Vice President for Awards, Kevin Wetmore.
And I would like to thank Bill Doan, who of course spent the day at Disney negotiating to get them to change the name to Snow White and the 7 Short Blue-Collar Workers. He was successful, but unfortunately ATHE is now to be known as Disney Presents ATHE. And all members of ATHE are now trademark characters whose likeness may not be used without permission. Please welcome to the 2013 ATHE Awards Ceremony. May I ask you right now to silence or turn off your cell phones or other noise-making devices. Please fasten your seatbelts. In the event that we hit some turbulence, oxygen masks will drop from the air. Please Please, over your head. If you're at the awards ceremony with a small child, please put on your mask first, and then adjust the child's. As with any theater production, the audience does not see the Herculean task that goes behind the scenes for months before the opening. So I would like to thank the awards committee for their work. If you're here, ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand and be acknowledged for your work? And I too would also like to thank Nancy Erickson, Sean Franklin Sewell, and their fantastic team, without whose efforts none of this would have been possible. The incoming Vice President for Awards, Danny Snyder-Young, will be introducing our first recipients. Danny?
The David Mark Cohen Award for Playwriting. Supported by the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival, the Association for Theater and Higher Education, and Dramatic Publishing Company, the David Mark Cohen National Playwriting Award is presented in an effort to promote the writing and production of new plays, while honoring and perpetuating the memory of David Mark Cohen, Professor of Playwriting at the University of Texas in Austin. And I'm very pleased to announce that the winner of the 2013 David Mark Cohen Award for Playwriting is Laura Jackman, and When We Awoke, There Was Light and Light. Judith Williams will accept this award on her behalf.
I am not the playwright, I am the lucky director of her beautiful play. And I'd like to read a few remarks from Laura Jackman, since she is unable to be with us today. The story of When We Awoke, There Was Light and Light begins with a phone call. It ends with a phone call. It has a beginning, middle, and end. But the path it took here to the 2013 Association for Theater and Higher Education Conference is anything but straight. In 2005, between my first and second years of an MFA in playwriting at Ohio University, I did an internship at Victory Gardens Theater in Chicago, the same theater that had given my mentor, Charles Smith, his start. Working under the then artistic director, Dennis Zacek, then associate artistic director, Sandy Shinner, and then artistic literary manager, Andy Diamond, I read plays, sat in on casting sessions, wrote program notes, and filled in wherever was necessary. Because Victory Gardens was and is a singular Chicago institution. They went from seeing me as an intern to seeing me as an artist, giving me my first new play commission in fall 2007. I set out to write a play that made sense for the theater and made sense for Chicago. It should be smart. It should be diverse. It should be theatrical. 6 months after I received that incredible phone call from Victory Gardens, offering me my first real artistic shot, I handed them the first draft of And When We Awoke. Incredibly, a mentor from another Chicago institution, Ed Sobel, the then director of new play development at Steppenwolf Theater Company, nominated the play for a Wasserstein Prize, a $25,000 award created by the Dramatists Guild and the Education Foundation of America to recognize an emerging female playwright in memory of Wendy Wasserstein. In April 2008, I received another phone call. This time it was from Christopher Durang, informing me that and when we awoke, there was light and light had been awarded the 2008 Wasserstein Prize. After a reading at the Second Stage Theater in New York City and an awards ceremony, and even more readings and awards, the phone call all playwrights are really waiting for, the one that says, somebody wants to produce your play still failed to materialize. I had written a 10-character play just as the economy crashed. The play earned me a financial cushion, an agent, dozens of meetings. It was the beginning of my relationship with theaters across the country and across the world. It was the play that truly began my career as a working playwright. It was also the play that seemed impossible to produce, until I received another phone call, this time from Dr. Kay Koger at the University of Oklahoma, the country's other OU. I had applied for a 3-month residency at the school, the Faith Broom Playwright in Residence program. OU wanted me, and they wanted, and when we awoke. I began my residency in the fall of 2012. My housing was a glass-walled cottage on the southern end of the campus. My job over the next few months? Teach an advanced playwriting seminar to a class of 10 and attend rehearsals for the world premiere of my play. Not only was I struck by the beauty of the college, the forceful, dusty winds, the incredibly loud football games, and thoughtful, generous students, I was incredibly impressed by my cast of 16 young actors and my director, Dr. Judith Pender. Their production was everything I had dreamed of and more. I am incredibly honored that production has led to my play receiving the 2013 David Mark Cohen Award. Thank you to everyone who's helped me and the play to this stage today. Thank you to Athas for hosting the reading of this play, for my fellow collaborators all along the way, and to all of you for supporting the incredible theater produced at the college level. I am grateful to all of you.
The Jane Chambers Playwriting Award is administered by the Women in Theater program and recognizes plays and performance texts created by women that present a feminist perspective and contain significant opportunities for female performers. This annual award is given in memory of lesbian playwright Jane Chambers, who through her plays A Late Snow, Last Summer at Bluefish Cove, My Blue Heaven, Kudzu, and The Quintessential Image became a major feminist voice in American theater. Now, the reading of this play is listed in your program, but it's not quite listed right. So it's listed that it will start at 2:15. Now, the doors are gonna open promptly at 3:15, no? The doors will open at 3:15 and then the show will start promptly at 3:30 and it'll still finish at 5:30-ish. So the winner of the 2013 Jane Chambers Playwriting Award is Claire Chafee for her play, Full South.
I find it so helpful that here in Orlando, the word world is capitalized, making it clear that it is invented and that there are many. In my playful self, I wonder what growing up in someone else's world, whether it is Disney's or the prevailing cultures, would teach a girl. Jane Chambers was born and grew up in Orlando. And I might have tried inventing rides if I were her. But she took it in her mind to move, to leave and write plays. She took it as a sign of encouragement, this power of invention. This power for her to say, well, in this world, women long for other women. I have looked for that ride while down here. I haven't found it yet. I feel an extreme gratitude to women in theater, to Athas, and to Jane Chambers for writing last summer at Bluefish Cove and taking it on faith that you could put a lesbian at the center of the world and call it Wild, or Kingdom, or Acapulco, and get on with writing what the world feels like for you. Not sure if it was Orlando or some true and invisible force that gave her that pluck, but I am from now on deeply grateful to have been awarded this honor, to stand among such brilliant colleagues, and to be urged on in my efforts. And if a girl has wandered in on her way to the Princess Boutique, and if she should see me here and you there, she just might keep this whole idea going of inventing rides and putting down on paper the version, hers, of this one and only wildlife that she was born into. Thank you.
A fun fact, Jane Chambers started college in Orlando, and she left Rollins College because at the time that she was enrolled, female students were not allowed to register for playwriting and directing classes until after all the male students had registered. It's not like that. It's not like that there anymore. So don't be mean to the faculty there, but you know, things change. So, Athas Award for Outstanding Article in a Journal acknowledges scholarship marked by methodological sophistication, complex and critical engagement with dramatic texts and performances, focused inquiries, and possible directions for future scholarship in a particular area. And the winner of Athas' Outstanding Article in a Journal Award goes to Kim Mara for Writing, Scarring, Knowing, a queerly embodied performance historiography in Theater Journal 64.
I think Beth might be the only one who's actually here today, so thank you, Beth, very much. There's an image of scholarship as a solitary occupation of the writer alone in her room in front of a keyboard, wrestling with her thoughts. Well, that may be how the words in the end get onto the page. But what leads up to and what punctuates the solitary act is the product of so much conversation and so much inspiration from others, in my case, from so many of you on this podium and in this room. That social dimension of writing is increased many-fold when the source is performance, perhaps especially when it's autobiographical performance. This piece literally began with me stumbling around in the basement of the home I share with my partner, using objects and movement to try to engage and understand history in emotional and embodied as well as intellectual ways. Theory very much followed practice. I really didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. It took the wise and generous words of others along the way to encourage me and help me figure out not only what I was doing, but why it might matter to others outside of myself. It felt so risky, so unlike anything else I've ever done as a scholar, so way out of my comfort zone that I never imagined it would lead to an article in Theater Journal, let alone an award. So much indeed is owed to the intrepid editor of Theater Journal, Penny Farfan, who took a huge leap to commission this piece and edit it, to Jill Dolan, who somehow saw what I was getting at and gave me some incredible feedback that helped me sort out the frame of the piece. And before them, I must thank Tracy Davis and Holly Hughes, who were so instrumental in nurturing the performance that is the source of the piece. And I've said this before to Holly, but I like to think of her now as my super Les Rosario. Because she puts on these incredible festivals of performances, and she included me in one recently in Ann Arbor where I got to share a dressing room with her and Carmelita Tropicana, which was, way beyond anything this lesbian scholar ever dreamed she'd be doing. And of course, I wouldn't have set foot on the stage or put pen to paper without the inspiration, love, and guidance of my partner and director, Meredith Alexander. There she is. And it must be said, I would not have felt the history in my body to do the performance or to write the piece without my now 24-year-old horse, who bears the legacy of the long, long history that I'm trying to write about. So thank you, Milo. Thank you all. It's been an amazing ride.
Athas Award for Outstanding Book is given on the basis of the study's potential to interrupt, change, and/or challenge theater practice and pedagogy, often emphasizing the interconnectedness of pedagogy and practice. 40 books were nominated this year. This year, the committee wishes to acknowledge 3 notable books. So the honorable mention this year goes to Stephanie Lee Baptiste, Darkening Mirrors, Imperial Representations in Depression-Era African-American Performance from Duke University Press, and Laurie Frederick, Trumpets in the Mountains, Theater and the Politics of National Culture in Cuba from Duke University Press. Stephanie and Laurie, please stand and allow us to acknowledge you. This year, Athas would like to recognize Nancy Kindelin for a special honorable mention for Artistic Literacy, Theater Studies, and a Contemporary Liberal Education, published by Palgrave Macmillan. Nancy, would you please stand and let us recognize you? And this year's winner for Athas Outstanding Book Award is Sarah Warner for Acts of Gaiety, LGBT Performance and the Politics of Pleasure from University of Michigan Press.
Thank you very much, Danny. Thank you, Athas, Bill Doan, Nancy Erickson, and the members of the award committee for this very moving distinction. I'd like to congratulate my fellow recipients and nominees, many of whom have garnered prestigious prizes for their work at other ceremonies this year. I have to say, I've had an incredible year. I mean, I really feel like I won the jackpot, and I don't take a moment of it for granted. Because of my immense good fortune and the position of privilege that I occupy, I feel it's more important than ever to come out as a lesbian and a member of the working class at every occasion I get. In rural Louisiana, where I'm from, people don't read many books, let alone write them. Our culture has, as Jill Roach so beautifully notes in Cities of the Dead, it's rooted in oral tradition and highly ritualized modes of performance. In my family, reading is often treated as a form of punishment. When children misbehave, they're grounded and sent to their room with a book. I understand my family's ambivalence about education. My dad, a perpetually homeless youth, was bullied at school and later forced to earn his GED in prison as a condition of his parole. If my parents caught me with a nose in a book when they thought I should be working, outside playing, or taking part in some communal activity, they would call me out
and accuse me of being lazy, uppity, or both. Whatever discipline I received would be accompanied by a lecture from my mother, who left school at 16, about how books were ruining my future. You'll never find a husband, she warned. Boys don't like girls who are smarter than they are. Thank you, Mom. My parents, like the subjects in my book, experienced a radically uneven distribution of life chances, but they dared to find joy and pleasure in the face of discriminatory and dehumanizing situations. They taught me how to fight, how to laugh, and how not to take myself or the world too seriously. For everything they've given me, I dedicate this award to them. I'm grateful to all the individuals and organizations that have supported the research and writing of Acts of Gaiety, including the feisty feminists in the Women in Theater program. I wish I could name you all, I love you women. And the amazing colleagues that I have and students at Cornell University. Ellen Gaynor and Carolyn Gelzer are here with me this weekend. Thank you so much. I'm forever indebted to Leanne Fields at the University of Michigan Press, who nurtured this project from its infancy, and to the editors of the Triangulation series, David Roman and Jill Dolan, whose passion, erudition, and scrupulous rigor have had vital implications for every one of us in this room. I greatly appreciate the critical generosity and good cheer of the panelists who debated my book on this afternoon's session. Kim Mara, Jill Dolan, Holly Hughes, Jennifer Brody, Megan Shea, and Joseph Sermatori. This book has benefited greatly from these and many, many other interlocutors. Again, I wish I could name them all, but some who have been chiefly important in this: Robin Bernstein, Erin Hurley, Ellen Diamond, Kate Davey, Sue Ellen Case, Stacy Wolf, Joan Lipkin, again, most Women in Theater program people. And I'd like to thank especially my partner, Mary Jo Watts, who can't be here today, but for 16 years she's been my partner in crime. This prize is a recognition of my small contribution to 6 decades of LGBT artistry, activism, and scholarship. I'm honored to share the conference table and stage today with so many members of the Vanguard. My book celebrates queer insurrections and hard-fought legal victories, but it also urges us to consider the costs and consequences of our progress and assimilation into the mainstream. Homosexuality is quickly becoming the new normal, and gays, at least white, affluent, integrationist-oriented ones, are now America's model minority. Is it a coincidence that the securing of LGBT rights has accompanied the erosion of civil liberties and possibilities for public life for ethnic minorities, immigrants, and the working poor? To what extent has a neoliberal gay agenda contributed to increased racial animus and an amplification of class disparities? These are questions we must consider, especially here and now in Florida. I'm profoundly grateful to my peers for supporting this book, a book that looks at lesbian feminist acts of gaiety, at euphoric and utopian endeavors that invite us to imagine a more egalitarian, just, and perversely pleasurable world. Thank you.
ATHE's Excellence in Editing Award honors both individual achievements in editing in a single project and sustained achievement in editing over extended periods of time. It is with great pleasure that the committee this year gives Maria Delgado the 2013 Excellence in Editing Award. Maria is not able to attend the ceremony, but receiving the award on her behalf is Joanne Tompkins, and Maria has sent the following acceptance video.
I would like to thank you all so very much for this wonderful award, and apologise for not being able to join you in Orlando to pick it up in person. Looking at the past recipients of this award, from Bonnie Moranka to Janelle Raynaud, I feel very honoured to be part of such company. Editing is one of those invisible labours which is rarely recognised as a scholarly activity, and yet it is key to thinking about what we publish and why. A way of really shaping how our discipline develops and what matters to us as scholars and practitioners. It's about being both reactive and proactive, and crucially, it's about teamwork. You're only as good as the people you work with, and I have been hugely privileged to work with many generous and inspired collaborators. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the editorial teams and co-editors I've worked with at Manchester University Press, Cambridge University Press, and Taylor and Francis, and my colleagues at Contemporary Theatre Review. To the editors of Theatre Forum and Western European Stages for inviting me to work with them, and to all the editors I've been fortunate enough to collaborate with on the collections that I've contributed to. Thanks are also due to my departmental colleagues at Queen Mary, University of London. Editing is really about ongoing conversations, and there are many of you in this room that have been part of the dialogues, discussions, and debates that make up the very DNA of editing. I'm currently working on a project about editing with Professor Joanne Tompkins of the University of Queensland, the new co-editor of Theatre Journal, so it seems particularly fitting that she has kindly agreed to pick up this award on my behalf. Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Athas.
Athas Award for Leadership in Community-Based Theater and Civic Engagement honors an individual or theater company that has worked in the field for a minimum of 10 years. This year's honorees are Linda Fry Burnham and Steve Derland.
Well, it's really weird to be here. Because we're not academics, we're just a couple of MFAs in visual art and writing. And no one has ever seen fit to hire us to teach in a university. Except for the one time when we stood in for a semester for a guy at UC Irvine and teaching performance, but the entire class got arrested for disturbing the peace. For 20 years, we ran a magazine called High Performance. And it was a print magazine. Some of you may be old enough to remember print. It started out to be about performance art, to document performance art, and to really seek out the artist's voice in documenting that work. It went on to deal with experimental and innovative art in all media. And about 1986 or 87, we began to be aware of some of the most adventurous artists that we knew who were going out into the community. They were stepping out of the art world, even out of the alternative art world, and working in hospitals and prisons and on the street and homeless shelters, working with populations of people who were not artists and creating community in those situations, sometimes specifically for social change. When the magazine closed in 1999 because it simply became too expensive, we morphed over onto the World Wide Web. We started a small nonprofit called Art in the Public Interest. Hey. Who is that? Norma! The first person to ever win this award. And then we went onto the web. It was actually in the early days of the World Wide Web, and a lot of the people that we were writing about were very hesitant to actually get involved with the web. They thought it was probably a passing phase. But over 10 years of that project, the Community Arts Network published thousands of pages of scholarly work and artists writing about their own work and all different kinds of writing. And it's actually a wonderful resource for anybody who wants to think about community engagement and the arts. The can closed in 2009, but I want to make you aware of a new magazine that's starting up out of Imagining America, Artists and Scholars in Public Life, and it's called Public, a journal of Imagining America, and it's edited by Jan Cohen Cruz, who won this award last year. You can still access the Community Arts Network, and I'm going to have Steve tell you how to do that.
Yes, the University of Indiana, their library was nice enough to archive the 10,000 or so pages of writing. And, a lot of it by people who were here or your peers, things like that. It's the address is the URL is impossible, but if you go to our old URL, communityarts.net, or API Online, that's our public interest online.org, you'll get directions on how to go there. I bring that up because it's archived on archive.org, if you're familiar with that. It's a great resource, but it doesn't come up when you Google things. And there's a lot of great writing there that doesn't deserve to disappear yet, so I urge you to check it out. It was always a great teaching resource for people. And I just want to say that even though we never were in academia, there were a number of people who were incredibly supportive of us over the years. A couple that deserve special mention are Bob Leonard and Phil Kelly at Virginia Tech. And it was always a major focus of ours to try and cross-pollinate the wisdom that was coming out of academia with the wisdom that was coming from grassroots practitioners. And there was a great value for both in that exchange. And one of the things I would like to leave you with, because I know there's lots of people thinking great thoughts out here and you're writing it down, is don't let it stay behind the academic firewall. Find ways to get it past that so that people like myself who don't have access to those journals and things like that, and the people, the grassroots practitioners who really want that information, can get it, because what we were all about is how art can really affect social change, and we deserve to see all this great thinking you're doing, so please find ways to get that writing out in public.
It is easy to become cynical as a teacher of theater, because once you get that graduate degree in theater, you can pretty much write your own ticket. And my siblings always say, you're just in it for the money. And that's true. But it is oftentimes one of the most difficult jobs we have. The Outstanding Teacher Award honors a college-level faculty member whose superiority as a teacher of theater is recognized by students and colleagues, who has provided inspiration through instruction in theater to students and teachers of theater, who has promulgated and practiced high standards of teaching in theater, and who has created strong and effective interpersonal communications in studios, shops, rehearsal halls, classrooms, through advising, mentoring, and all aspects of the student-teacher relationship. Candidates must support multiculturalism and diversity in theater and education. This year, the award goes to Joseph Roach. I was about to invite Professor Charlotte Canning up here. This prize now comes with a prize from the Oscar Brockett Center. Charlotte will explain it better than I can.
Thank you. I'm here today as the director of the Oscar G. Brockett Center for Theater, History, and Criticism at the University of Texas at Austin, where Brock taught for so many years. Many of you know him, many of you have your own stories about Oscar Brockett, but probably the thing we most hold in common about him is not that book, but the fact that he was a magnificent teacher. And when we were working with his family as a way to honor him through the center that they so generously founded, we wanted to find a way to have his memory live on in the profession. And it seemed to us a teaching award was the best possible way we could do that. And I know Brock would be thrilled that Joe was the first recipient of the Oscar Brockett Teaching Award. for many, many reasons, but one of them is when we threw Brock a party in 1998, I believe. It was to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the publication of the history of theater. Joe gave one of the funniest tributes I've ever heard in my life, and he made Brock laugh. And there was nothing that made Brock grouchier than receiving any kind of recognition. So, to me, if you need no other evidence that Joe Roach is a talented teacher, is that he made Oscar Brockett laugh.
Charlotte, thank you, Athas. Thanks to the committee, the selection committee, and the students who nominated me. Coming back to Florida reminded me that years ago in my youth, shortly after the Second Punic War, local Floridians, because I worked down here in a boatyard for a time, local Floridians referred to the retirees and residents of a certain age as Q-tips because of the white hair. And I thought, if I come back to Florida, I don't want to come back as a Q-tip, but here you are. And it's not so bad. As a matter of fact, it's really, really good. This one means a great deal to me, more than any other recognition I've received. And let me just tell you why in a few words. I want to recognize three constituencies here. I want to recognize my teachers, K through 12, at the University of Kansas, at Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK, and at Cornell. And I want to recognize my students, some of whom are here today. And I also want to recognize their students. Their students now and their students yet to come, because they're on their way, they're coming. And I want to do that by just telling a story, a brief story, about my mentor at the University of Kansas, Robert Finley. A number of people here will remember Bob now passed. Bob taught and spoke predominantly in the subjunctive. If you were a balcony climbing a Montague, what would you do then? And it was a beautiful way of teaching theater, because so much of what we do is in the subjunctive condition, contrary to fact, but nonetheless true for all of that. And when I was graduated from KU, Bob showed up at the graduation, big affair in a stadium, big school with a lot of hooded, capped graduates. And there was a receiving line where we went past and shook the hands of the faculty. And when I came to Bob, I didn't know what to say, and I stammered, "Thank you." And what he said was not in the subjunctive, it was in the imperative. What he said was, "Pass it on." And what I want to tell you, especially my students here, but all of you, is just that. Pass it on.
Thank you. I wish I could come back as a Q-tip. I'm afraid I'm going to come back as a pencil. Thanks, Dad. ATHE has 2 Career Achievement Awards, one to an individual whose career has primarily been in professional theater, and one to an individual whose career has primarily been in theater in higher education. They each indicate a career of distinguished service to the field. Frequently, recipients have distinguished careers which overlap in both areas. Awardees must be recognized and known for their superlative contributions to the field. They must be authentic role models to peers and students. They must be original thinkers and creators whose work has established new frames of reference. They must be instrumental in nursing the careers of others and be effective advocates for the field. Candidates should be known for supporting multiculturalism and diversity. In addition, the recipients of the Educational Theater Award must be recognized for their scholarly and creative contributions, their work with professional organizations, and service to students. That description suits no one better than, of course, Bob Shanke, our Career Achievement Award for Educational Theater.
Growing up, I had very little exposure to theater. I played Uncle Sam in a grade school pageant. That was about it. That changed my freshman year at Midland College when I met Mrs. Sarah Hawkinson. My freshman roommate begged me to accompany him to the auditions of the fall play that she was directing. Reluctantly, I agreed, and wound up playing a bit part in John Galsworthy's 1926 play, Escape. I loved it, and wound up either performing on stage or working backstage on every play she directed the next 4 years. She was something else. She had studied at Northwestern University at a time when Northwestern was absolutely the place to study theater and oral interpret. They even invited her to join the faculty. But she believed her calling was at this small Lutheran college in Nebraska, where she was the only faculty member teaching all of the speech and theater courses. She even coached nationally award-winning debate teams. We were always hypnotized by her dramatic lectures. But she did so much more than just lecture. She used her extensive background in interpretive reading and vividly recreated scenes for us. When she read the dialogue, standing with her imposing dignity behind the lectern, and always dressed eloquently in her typical blue suits, she brought excitement to the printed page. I still shudder as I recall her reading Hedda's line, "I'm burning your child, Taya," and her reenactment of ripping the manuscript and throwing it in the fire. I remember my senior year when we were rehearsing Archibald MacLeish's J.B., a modern adaptation of the Book of Job. There is a point in the play when Job's wife becomes so annoyed with his religious devotion that she screams out, "Curse God and die." Well, Mrs. Hawkinson, not satisfied with the actress's rendition, charged down the aisle of the theater, threw herself on the stage, and let out the most blood-curdling, "Curse God and die!" We all trembled as she then said, "Okay, now do it. Don't hold back." She also taught a year-long Shakespeare course. The day we were to have read King Lear, she began her lecture and then asked a question. No one responded. We had all been working the night before on a theater production and had not read the play. She paused, then asked another question. More silence. Then she closed her book and announced, "Well, I guess there's no point in my being here," and left the room. Our mouths dropped. We had disappointed her. Needless to say, we were prepared the next day. When I informed Mrs. Hawkinson my senior year that I planned to pursue a theater career, I expected her to be overjoyed. She wasn't. It took me several years to understand her goal was never to produce theater practitioners. She didn't care how many majors she had, or if anyone ever went on in the theater. Her mission was much more important. She wanted her students to love the theater. And she succeeded. I certainly want to thank Millie Behringer for nominating me for this award. I want to thank my partner of 29 years, Jack Barnhart, for supporting me and inspiring me through the years. However, I dedicate this award to Mrs. Sarah Hawkinson. She should be the one receiving it, but I'll accept it for her.
Before we give the final award for the evening, please allow me to encourage you to consider nominating an individual or individuals for the awards that we present each year. Too often, excellence goes unrecognized by students, colleagues, administrators, family members, and others. At ATHE, however, we can celebrate the great work being done in the theater. None of us do it for the recognition or the awards, or the money, or anything. But it is vital that we recognize the achievements worthy of celebrating. As you attend focus group meetings, dine and drink with old friends and mentors, and attend the many sessions here at ATHE this year, please think about the work, the people whose work should be celebrated and has not yet been. Please be a hero by nominating yours. Because once you get an award from ATHE, you can pretty much write your own ticket. Let me also add that at the end of the ceremony, I am turning this position over to Danny Schneider-Young, who will now be the Vice President for Awards for the next 2 years. It's been a genuine honor and pleasure to serve the organization and to learn about all the fabulous work that's being done. It actually is a thrill to read the articles in the books, and it feels like every year I'm going through yet another comp exam. In honor of Ellen Stewart's profound legacy to the profession and academy, ATHE last year renamed its award the Ellen Stewart Career Achievement Award in Professional Theater. And it is my incredible pleasure to present this award to a major voice in American theater. From early work about the immigrant experience and identity, such as FOB and The Dance in the Railroad, through the phenomenal award-winning and sublime M. Butterfly, which I still love to assign for the late-night emails I get of, wait, what? I have questions. Bless their hearts. Through his most recent works, Yellowface and Chinglish, it is my pleasure to present the Ellen Stewart Career Achievement Award to David Henry Hwang.
Thanks, that's incredibly kind. You know, as an Asian American kid from Los Angeles, when I first went into the theater, there were a couple things I had to get used to. One was the hugging. We didn't really do that where I grew up. And the second is praise, because you know, sort of as a Chinese kid, you're supposed, if someone says something good about you, you're like, oh, no, I suck. So to receive this award from Athas is sort of agonizingly wonderful. And I want to thank you all here and the committee. And it's amazing to get to the point in one's career when, you know, when I can get an award that's named after Ellen Stewart, and look back at sort of the amazing roster of artists who've you've been so gracious to give this award to previously. And I think back to when I first started out in my early 20s, and my early plays were produced by the amazing and legendary producer Joseph Papp. And I met Joe, and he told me two things. One was, well, I think you'll survive in this career because you can write comedy. And the second thing was, I think you'll get better looking as you get older. And those were kind of the two things that I've held on to over the course of my career. But you know, this award, there's just a wonderful kind of ecology and relationship, I think, between those of us who've chosen to pursue our theatrical career more in the performance area, and those who have chosen to pursue it in the academic area. Because certainly, I look back on my experience of also not growing up particularly going to theater much, and then going to college and getting to see my first shows, and seeing Thornton Wilder's The Matchmaker, and seeing a production of Winter's Tale, and telling myself, well, maybe I could do that. And I happened to go to a university that didn't have a playwriting program, but I started writing plays in my spare time. And I found a professor, John LaRue, who was willing to look at them. And John told me that my plays were really bad, which they were, and that my problem was that I wanted to write plays, but I didn't actually know anything about the theater. But John was also a great professor and a great spirit. And so he basically designed a playwriting major for me. And I spent the next few years trying to see as many plays and read as many plays as I could, including those that, as a California kid, I didn't have access to, that I would read about in theater journals like TDR, so I could at least have some sort of understanding of what was going on in the rest of the theater world. And by doing that, by the time I got to my senior year, I wrote a play to be done in my dorm called FOB, which ended up being that first play that Joe Papp produced in New York. So I think it's very hard nowadays to find theater professionals for whom their college years was not a formative experience in terms of making that decision to go into the theater, first experiencing theater, and finding that commitment. And the other thing that's incredibly important about the ecology is that, you know, in some ways in professional theater right now, I think it's the best of times and the worst of times. The commercial theater, Broadway, particularly musicals, I think that world is at least financially healthier than it's been in my entire lifetime. I remember some times in the 80s and 90s when theaters were dark on Broadway, when there was a year that we couldn't find like 3 plays to nominate for best, 4 shows to nominate for best musical. I think that was the year that Aspects of Love won. No, Sons of Boulevard. And now, of course, Broadway is booming, and musicals, at least, I think, are closer to the heart of American popular culture than they've been at any time since the 1950s. However, the flip side of that is that the commercial theater pulls the cart of the field in a way that it didn't 20 or 30 years ago. And the not-for-profit movement, which was supposed to have been born as an alternative to the commercial theater, now largely serves the commercial theater. And not-for-profit theaters get judged by, well, how many shows have you moved to New York? How many shows have gotten to Broadway? Have you won the Regional Theater Tony? Which is pretty antithetical to the values for which they were founded. And I think this is a problem with our culture in general, that our culture has increasingly become about how much money something can make, and that the value of a piece of art is based on its financial return. And that's why what you guys do in the academic world serves as such an incredible and important counterweight, because there still has to be a place where theater is valued, not for the amount of money it makes, but for the amount of joy and artistic excellence it can bring to the world. And hopefully the commercial theater, the professional theater, the New York theater will increasingly turn back in that direction and the pendulum will swing. And when that day comes, it will have been largely the academic world, which was the refuge for excellence and quality, aside from economic considerations in the American theater. So thank you for the work you do, thank you for this award, and let's keep working together.